Hi, welcome to today's webinar. Today we're going to talk to the folks over at SmartX, and they're going to show us the latest release of ControlUp 4.0, who was just released. I talked a little bit about their product in my last presentation, and now they're going to show us all the new cool stuff they have added. And I'm especially interested in the new Hypervisor support that they have just added. So, Amir, I leave the microphone to you, and you take the show.
Yeah, hi, Tron, thanks a lot. So, hi guys, this is Yoni here. I'm the CTO at ControlUp, and I want to thank everyone for joining. And hopefully you'll see some interesting and new stuff coming from ControlUp. So, we'll start with a quick introduction for the sake of you guys who's kind of the first time you're seeing the product. So, what you're seeing on screen right now, this is the ControlUp Management Console. This is basically a real-time IT operations platform designed to make the lives of sysadmins easier, to make troubleshooting more efficient, to make day-to-day management simpler, basically enable you to do the task you want easier, faster, and obviously much simpler. We're now on the fourth major release. This is what we're going to discuss today, the new features in ControlUp 4.0. Up until now, I would say the two biggest feature sets that are known, that ControlUp are known for are first, the real-time visibility. So kind of the ability to see your network, to see real-time metrics, to be able to drill down from a computer to a session, to a process, to find out what's causing issues and remediate them in real time. And in addition to that, a whole wide set of management actions you can actually trigger on any kind of object. This could be, again, a computer, a session, or process, and not only see what's going on, but also troubleshoot and remediate issues as they occur right from using the same UI, the same console. We have been focusing mostly up until now on end-user computing environments, mostly Citrix Xenapp, Citrix Zen Desktop, and lately we're also seeing some pretty nice growth in VMware View. And this is also one of the things we'll discuss today, is the kind of the expanding our reach to View customers, and also, by the way, to anyone who is managing a virtual environment. I think that the new feature, the new version, ControlUp 4, is actually relevant to anyone managing a virtual infrastructure. So without further ado, let's discuss the new ControlUp 4.0 version. This was released a little less than a month ago, and the main feature we introduced is what we call hypervisor integration, and that's basically the ability to connect ControlUp to the actual virtual infrastructure layer. This could be vCenter, this could be Zen Server, and in the near future, other hypervisors, and extend the real-time visibility and management features to the entire stack. So hosts, and obviously then VMs, sessions, processes, and basically any meaningful object in your enterprise infrastructure. So let's just start by adding right now the console you're seeing. It's actually the ControlUp running on our lab, our demo lab here at ControlUp. And as you can see on the left side of the console, this is the tree of managed objects. So the hypervisor folder, the folder I'm highlighting right now, this is a new folder in V4. This is where you're going to actually add the virtual infrastructure and manage it. So let's start by doing something simple like adding our vCenter. We have here a single vCenter in charge of our entire ESX platform. And we're going to add it and start seeing some real-time metrics and issues and the available management features. So it's very simple. I'm actually right-clicking here. I'm going to add, obviously, clicking on the hypervisor. And the first thing I should do is choose the hypervisor type. So as I mentioned, we currently support VMware ESX. This could be 4x, 5x, 5.1, 5.5, or Citrix Zen Server. And this is actually supported on Zen Server 5.6, 6.0, 6.1, and obviously 6.2. Now, the only thing we need to do, and this is to kind of, following on the, I think, great ControlUp tradition of simplicity and the ease of use, The only thing you need to do is basically type in or paste the URL to your vCenter with the /SDK in the end. This might look familiar to anyone configuring Xen desktop sites. The other thing is basically give it a display name, okay, something like VMware vCenter or something more descriptive. And the last thing you need to do is basically configure credentials. Now, the minimal set of credentials we need is an account which can speak with vCenter and has read-only access. This is the minimum requirements. So with the read-only access account, you can connect to vCenter and display everything. If you want to also use the VMware power management features we introduced, then you will need an account that is able to do the power management tasks on VMs. So by clicking on OK now, what's happening in the background is ControlUp is actually connecting via HTTPS to the remote API services on the vCenter machine and starts communicating with it using the VMware public SDKs. So this is a completely agentless operation. We're not installing anything on vCenter. We're not installing anything on the ESX host, God forbid. We are simply speaking with the vCenter over the network via HTTPS. We are querying the vCenter relevant statistics, and we are displaying them on grid. So what you're seeing right now after the initial connection, and by the way, that's it. What the process you've seen so far, this is the only steps you need to complete in order to connect ControlUp with the virtual infrastructure. So once we finish that, we can see on screen now the initial list of hosts, of ESX hosts, which are managed on this specific vCenter. On the left side, on the tree, you can see the actual data centers and clusters. So the objects we display are actually the data centers, the clusters, and represent by default all hosts that exist on that specific environment. Now let's switch to, I'm actually going to hit F11 now, which will allow me to show you, use more real estate to show you extra metrics and configuration metrics. So I just did that. This is, by the way, relevant for anyone interested in putting ControlUp on a large display. Just hit on F11 and let it use the entire screen. So what do we have here, right? So this is a list of ESXi hosts. First, we have a few configuration metrics, right? So we have obviously the name of the hypervisor, the version. We can see here the specific builds. We can see how many physical CPU cores are installed. We can see how much memory is configured. And obviously we have, as usual in ControlUp, we have all the real-time performance metrics. The stress level, this should be familiar to anyone using ControlUp. The stress level is a ControlUp calculated column. It takes into effect all the relevant performance metrics, and based on their values, it decides what's the current health level of that object. So in this case, we can quickly see, the ESX host is currently under stress. Now, regarding other metrics, we obviously have CPU usage in real time, memory. We have quite a few I/O metrics. And what I'll do in the first part of the demo, I'm going to both kind of concentrate on the hypervisor integration, but alongside that, I also want to show you some of the improvements we made to I/O monitoring and I/O troubleshooting. So it's kind of goes hand in hand. So I'll try to highlight both the hypervisor-related features and the new I/O metrics. So going back to the host metrics, we can see here quite a few I/O-related metrics, including IOPS usage in real time, the read and write latency against the data store, the read rate, the write rates, free space, and obviously some network-related metrics like the NIC usage, how many dropped packets we have on the host, NVM count, and some other statistics. So this quick view, I think, gives you a very nice overview of your host performance right now. And you can quickly kind of assess what's going on and get a clear picture of the virtual infrastructure health. Actually, we have seen some customers, again, think that up until V4, most of our customers were actually RDS or VDI admins. And once they started using the new host view and they showed it to the VMware guys or the Zen server guys, they were like, wow, this is better view than vSphere or a better view than Zen Center. And they kind of started to use that on their own teams. And for us, this is a great evidence of the value of this new feature. Now let's look here on the issue we were seeing on screen. We have a host currently in a critical stress level, and we can see that most of the problematic metrics are regarding IOPS, right? So we have high IOPS usage, more than 500 IOPS. We have latency, we have high reads and write rate. So we definitely have an IOPS issue on this host. Now, as usual with ControlUp, you can do the contextual double click. You can drill down, and that's what I'll do right now. I'm going to double click the host. And I'm actually drilling down into the VM layer, right? So I'm actually drilling down, and what I'm seeing right now, I can still see in the upper part of the grid, I can see the host itself with all the real-time metrics. But below that, I can see a live list of virtual machines currently running on this host. And by the way, all the metrics you're seeing right now, those are metrics coming from the vCenter infrastructure. So even without the ControlUp agent, you can see all the statistics you're seeing on screen right now, right? So far, we are still in an agentless world. We get all the statistics from the virtual infrastructure. Now, we are troubleshooting an IOPS issue, so we can see all the VMs. And we want to basically find out which VM is the one VM or the few VMs which are causing the IO issue. So I can do something simple like, for example, sort the view based on virtual reads and writes IOPS. So let's do that. Okay, so in this pretty basic example, we can see that in this case, it's a 2012 server, a single VM is the one VM consuming almost all IOPS on the entire host, right? We can see reads and writes IOPS, it's almost 630 IOPS, which is, almost the entire IOPS we're seeing currently used on that specific host, right? So this is a very simple drill, but it's showing us some of the power of the real-time metrics and the drill down exercise. And as you can see, if I'll scroll right, you can see we have quite a few metrics we can show on each VM. So these would be obviously CPU usage, CPU ready if it's a VMware environment. We can see how much memory is actually being used on the VM. We can see again drop packets, which is a great indication of networking performance issues. And we have quite an extensive list of configuration metrics for each VM. So which host is currently streaming this VM, IP address, MAC address, we can see the tools version, we can see the power state. So it's quite a lot of information here. Now, let's take it up a notch, right? So we have identified which VM is the one VM causing the IOPS issue on the host. Now, if you're dealing with vSphere or VCOps or most of the traditional virtual infrastructure monitoring solution, this is probably as far as you can go, right? You'll see which VM is causing the issue, and then you're on your own going to hunt the possible culprits. Now in ControlUp, since we are dealing with the entire stack, I can actually double-click this Windows server right now and drill down into the user sessions layer, just like we used to do on a Xenapp farm or a Zen desktop environment, right? So I'm actually drilled down into the VM itself. So now I'm seeing rich guest OS data. So I can still see the VM here, right, with all the VM metrics, IOPS, CPU, everything. And below that, I can see this just happens to be an RDSH 2012 server. This is actually an Horizon 6 server, but we'll get to that later. So we can see right now we have 4 sessions. 4 users are currently running on this 2012 server. And one of the cool things I think we added in V4, we actually added IO metrics to both the sessions and processes layer, right? So you can actually see for each session how much IO it's consuming in real time, and also for each process. And this feature allows us currently to spot the actual session who is causing the IO issue in this case. So we can see the admin session here, besides seeing how much memory and CPU it's running in real time, we can see that it's pretty obvious that this is the session that is consuming all the reads and writes IOPS on this VM. So great, we find out the one user causing the IO issue on the entire host, and now we can basically drill down further to the most, to the atomic entities we can see with ControlUp, and we're actually drilling down now inside the session to see the processes. So these are the live processes running on this session. And as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, we added IO metrics. So live real-time IO metrics for each process. So this enables us to basically pinpoint, in this specific case, pinpoint as the one process causing the IO issue on the VM and in turn on the entire host. Now, some of you guys may already kind of identify DynamoExa, and that's great. But if you're not familiar with that, so you can call the user, you can start investigating, but this is ControlUp, right? So you can do things much easier and more efficient. So we can basically right-click the process, or the session for that matter, and we can initiate an action some of you might have seen before, which is called Get Session Screenshot, which basically allows us to see the end user screen in real time. And again, based on the privacy policy of your environment, you can restrict this, but in my sake, I can, in my environment, I'm allowed to do everything. So I'm just going to take a screenshot of this session because I want to find out which application is actually causing the IO issue. Right, and not surprisingly, DynamoExa is basically the engine behind IOmeter. IOmeter is one of the most well-known IO load utilities. You might heard Jim Moyle speaks about this a lot. This is a great utility to test your IO. In this case, it turns out one rogue admin was probably wanted to test his new shiny storage in the middle of the day, find out how much IOPS it can serve, and while doing that, it was causing a major IO issue. So using ControlUp, using the new Hypervisor integration feature, using the new IO metrics, we can actually, in something like, I would say, less than 10 seconds, we can see an issue on the host level, and we can drill down all the way to the actual application screen causing the issue. Now, obviously, besides seeing the actual application screen, we can actually remediate or fix the issue right from there. We can either terminate the process, we can send a message to the end user, we can start a chat with the user, and by the way, one small new feature we added, which is pretty useful in circumstances like this, is the ability to throttle the CPU of that specific process. Right? So we can tell this process you can use no more than 1, 2, 3% CPU, and that will effectively lower the resource consumption of this process while still keeping it alive. Right? So this is another small new features we added in V4. Okay, so let's go back to the host view. So again, now we're seeing the ESX hosts. Now, what I'm going to do right now, as you might have noticed, I have some other hypervisor connections configured. So I'm going to right-click and connect to all my hypervisors right now. And besides the vCenter we just added, all other hypervisor connections are actually Xen server hypervisors, right? So we support both ESX and Xen server with V4. And one of the cool things here is so we can actually see both hypervisors in the same view, right? So if you're managing heterogeneous environments, you have multiple types of hypervisors. You can use ControlUp, and you can see in a single pane of glass all hypervisors and their performance in a single UI, right? So this is pretty valuable for some enterprise environments I'm familiar with. Now, just to show you how Xen server looks like from an architectural point of view, the way to add Xen server is exactly the same. Instead of VMware, you will obviously select Xen server, and you will simply type in HTTP and the actual pool master IP address or FQDN, right? That's it. Just configure HTTP, the pool master IP address or FQDN, and again, you can you should select the relevant or add the relevant credentials. Now, this could be the actual Xen server root account, by simply adding a new account and choosing the local computer domain. So just go ahead and type in here root or any other local Zen server user and type in the relevant password. Or if you enabled Active Directory authentication on your pool, you can actually use your AD account to connect to Zen server. Right? So once you do that, and we can check one hypervisor here, for example. So this is actually the pool master IP address, and this is the local account we use to connect to the hypervisor infrastructure. Now, one important thing to notice here is that we support both Zen server pools, right? So pools with more than one hypervisor, but we also support standalone Zen servers. And the only difference would be that when you add a hypervisor connection, if it's a pool, the name of the connection will be the name of the pool. And if it's a standalone Zen server, you will see it like this, the actual Zen server host FQDN, right? And from a VMware point of view, we only support connections to vCenter. We currently do not support direct connections to ESXi hosts. I'm not sure how common it is in enterprise environments to actually manage directly ESXi hosts, but your feedback is appreciated, and if we'll see demand for that, then we'll obviously add that in future releases. Right, so let's take a quick look on the Zen server hypervisor. So in here we have a bunch of Zen server hosts. You can see we have some 6.0 and 6.2 hosts. And obviously, most of the critical metrics are supported on both platforms. So obviously, the CPU usage, the memory, some of the major IOPS related metrics. Two things I want to note here. First, the virtual CPU to physical CPU ratio. This is an interesting column, I think. This is actually, the guy who inspired us to add this is Sean Bass. I guess some of you are familiar with him. He was kind of telling us that one of the most important things to notice on hosts, especially hosts running RDS or VDI workloads, is the ratio between how many physical cores you have and how many virtual CPUs are currently assigned to the running VMs. And we actually went ahead and checked the VMware best practices, and we found that if the ratio is more than 10, then you might expect some CPU, I would say CPU overwhelming issue, right? So you might expect some performance issues when you start crossing the ratio. So this is a pretty neat way to see immediately out of the box how many cores you have and what's the ratio between the physical cores and the actual virtual CPU currently running on the host. Well, this is one thing I wanted to note. And the other thing, which is pretty important, is you can see that on the ES6 host, most of the IO-related metrics are turned on by default. But if you look on Zen servers, you can see that, for example, the Zen, let's focus on Zen server. Let's see, let's focus on our Zen server 6 farm. So you can see on the Zen server 6 farm, most of the IO metrics are actually not enabled, right? And some of the NIC metrics. And the reason is that those metrics in Zen server are only supported starting Zen server 6.1. Okay, and if we'll go ahead and for example, drill down into the 6.2 farm, so in here we can see some of the more important metrics like the IOPS usage and the read and write rates, and we can see the NIC dropped ratio, right? So starting for 6.1 and 6.2, we can actually see most of the hypervisor metrics using Zen server. And the only thing you need to do, you need to check out this CDX article, right? So it's CDX 135033. So with 6.1, you have to basically install the supplemental pack of the performance monitoring enhancement and enable it. And in 6.2, you have to run a single command to enable the additional IO metrics. So we can simply browse to this article and complete necessary steps. And once you do that, for Zen server host, starting from 6.1, you will be able to see all the relevant IO and network metrics. Right, so let's go back to the entire host view. So one quick thing I want to show you. Let's look on this host, for example, ZenCO3, right? So I'm drilling down into it, right? So I will see the VMs running right now. And as you can see, by default, when we are drilling down to a host, the computer's view is actually using the virtual machines column presets. Now, the virtual machines column preset, this is a new preset in v4, and this is actually a list of columns which are all of them are actually coming from the hypervisor, right? So even if you're not installing any agents, all virtual machines related columns will be presentable and you can use them and view the stats. Now let's look at an example, right? In this case, we can see a single, this just happened to be a Xenapp file server. So when we're looking at this VM from the virtual infrastructure standpoint, so we can see, it's using quite a lot of host CPU usage. It's actually affecting the CPU usage of the entire host. We can see the physical memory used. We can see the IOPS again. We can see reads and writes IOPS even on Zen server host. We can see the we can see the network throughput, receive and send. So all of this is available, including obviously the Zen server tools version and power state. Now, one cool thing we can do, assuming we have agents deployed on those Xenapp 6.5 VMs, we can actually switch views, right? So we can go here and switch into the Citrix Xenapp view, and this will present a different column set, which is, I would say, most of the columns here are coming from the agent standpoint, right? So the CPU we're seeing now, this is the CPU as Windows see it. Right, and the same for this queue, and obviously the specific Xenapp metrics like Xenapp server load, and all other Xenapp specific metrics like load evaluator and login mode, etc. So we can kind of always decide on which kind of column set we want to display. And by the way, another thing we added are a few detailed views you can use to troubleshoot specific issues. Like, for example, if we'll go back to the, let's go back to the IOPS issue. So when we're troubleshooting an IOPS issue, we can actually switch to the detailed view IO, and this will show us only IO related metrics. So we can really troubleshoot an IO issue. Now, like, we can see the disk queue from the agent standpoint. We can see Windows metrics like average disk reads and write time. And we can also see in the same view virtual infrastructure metrics. So latency, we can see, as you've seen before, IOPS, reads and writes. And this really allows us to kind of, sink in and, do a deep dive on the IO from an IO perspective and see all IO related metrics in a single view, both Windows and hypervisor related. Okay, so I think we covered most of the real-time visibility aspect of the new hypervisor integration feature, and hopefully you've seen some of the value it's introduced, so far. One other thing we added, and this is from a management standpoint, we added an option to do VM power management from the console. So by right-clicking any VM, you have this new action set here called VM power management. And what we added here is basically, I think, one of the most common tasks and one of the main reasons people are actually accessing vSphere or ZenCenter is when they have to, for example, power on VMs, or they have to do some forced resets, or even force power off in some extreme use cases. So up until now, whenever VMs were hanged, or whenever we need to start VMs, we had to go to the good old ZenCenter vSphere consoles and do it from there. With V4, with ControlUp V4, we can actually do those common power management actions right from ControlUp console. And this is actually utilizing the VMware or ZenServer APIs, and it's utilizing the hypervisor connection to pass on the relevant commands to the relevant host and either reset or start or power off the VMs. And again, as any other ControlUp action, you can select multiple multiple targets, and go ahead and basically power off your entire environment in 5 seconds. No, I'm kidding. Don't do that. Don't power off your entire environment, but it's a powerful feature, right? So use it wisely. Now, this is actually a good example of how we can use the new hypervisor integration feature to extend the ControlUp management library, right? I'm not sure if you're all familiar with, but we have a feature called script-based action. So this is a feature which enables you guys to extend ControlUp, the ControlUp built-in library, using your own scripts, right? So for example, I know that when I think about it, I would say the 2 most common tasks sysadmins are using vSphere and Xenappblog for are A, power management, and B, viewing the console, right? Viewing the actual VM console. So using script-based action, you can basically go ahead and create a new action, call it something like view VM console, right? You will obviously choose the assigned to would be computer, which is VM in ControlUp. The context would probably be ControlUp console. And by doing that, you can actually go ahead and write a PowerShell code, which will use built-in vCenter, XenServer commands or APIs, and will enable you to actually launch a view console command from ControlUp. Right? This is in addition to actions we are adding as a vendor. So you can use the existing script-based action mechanism to introduce VM or hypervisor-related actions into the main console. Okay, now the last thing I want to show you in regards to hypervisor integration and the new I/O metrics is actually inside the executables view. Right? So we also added I/O reads and writes metrics to the overall executables, or some people are calling it the apps view. Right? So this view is basically a view that shows you all the applications running on your enterprise, and for each application, it's showing aggregated data, like how many instances of this application is currently running, on how many computers the process is currently running, what's the overall memory usage, what's the average CPU usage, and starting V4, we're also showing the overall I/O usage of applications. Right? So as you might notice here, I'm already sorting the grid based on I/O writes operations. Right? So this means that I'm currently seeing the enterprise applications running in my environment, and I can see, I can see which applications are the most I/O intensive applications in my environment. Now, some of you might notice a few known components like FB Server or Chrome or Outlook, but now this basically means that using the new I/O metrics on the apps level, I can quickly figure out which applications are consuming the highest amount of IOPS on my environment. Right? So it's a great new way to figure out who is causing I/O related performance issues using this existing view. Okay, so until we see some general questions regarding the hypervisor integration of I/O metrics, we can move on to the second part of the demo, and these are some of the additional features we introduced in V4. And the first one I want to kind of highlight is the VMware Horizon 6 support. Right. So as I mentioned, I would say up until V3, we were mostly focusing on Citrix environments, so XenApp, XenDesktop, and we're seeing great success there, and we obviously keep improving the feature set related to Citrix. This is one of our key partners, but we're also seeing in parallel, we're seeing really great growth when it comes to VMware in the end user computing space. So we are seeing more and more view related projects. We're seeing view admins starting to manage large VDI environments. And as some of you might know, we actually sponsored the last VMworld, where we had a chance to meet lots of VMware admins, and we were quite surprised to see lots of new VDI-related projects using View. And this is great news, I think, for the entire industry. And as part of that movement, we actually are now officially supporting both View 5 and the new Horizon 6 SID. Both managing RDSH and VDI endpoints. So, just to show you a few quick examples, we have here a view environment, right? So we have a view environment consisting both from View 5 and View 6, and we have both RDSH and VDI workloads. And you can see here, for example, one column we added in V4 is actually showing the View agent version, right? So you can see in my environment I have a few View 5.2 and View 6 hosts. Some of them are RDS servers, some of them are VDI endpoints. So this is nice and a quick way to see, to make sure the agent is up to date on your workloads. And besides the actual agent, if we go ahead and switch to the sessions view, now let's focus on the view environment so we can see only view-related sessions. Right, so you can see, for example, if we look on sessions, we can see here some, this is, for example, this is a PC over IP session. Right, so we fully support PC over IP sessions. We can see all the relevant statistics, and if it's actually a view session, a PC over IP session, you can see here on the rightmost side, we can also display some specific view statistics, like the connection server URL. We can see the client domain, we can see the client type, and basically quite a few details on the actual view client. Right, now we keep extending this. We are also going to support, add support for PC over IP latency, and we are actually waiting for feedback on any other critical metric you guys think are relevant for managing a view environment. But I would say that the important thing to note here is that something kind of like 90% of the existing feature set, which was working so well for Zen Desktop and Zen App, is relevant for View. Right, the ability to see sessions, the ability to drill down from an RDS or VDI endpoint to drill down all the way to the process to see what's causing an issue. All of this is relevant in a View environment as well. Right, the action set, we can again we can right-click any session, and we can do all the familiar ControlUp actions like sending a message and getting a screenshot and temporarily removing the group policy. This is pretty cool, by the way. You know what? Let me quickly show this to you, in case someone hasn't seen this before. So I've actually connected here to one of the. This is actually a Zen app session, but it will work the same for any View environment. So this is a regular user logging onto an RDP session, and he has quite a few group policy settings in place. And by quite a few, I mean everyone. I actually went ahead and I enabled any group policy settings known to man. And you can see the result on screen, right? So this is a very tightly controlled, restricted session. So, this is great for us admins, but when we remote assist this user and we want to troubleshoot an issue, it's pretty hard to do that. We can't open command line, we can't change anything in regedit, we can't change a proxy setting, and it makes troubleshooting an issue inside a session really hard. Now, traditionally, you would log off the session, you would configure some exclusions on the GPO objects, replicate, log back in, hoping everything is worked, and it's very time consuming. With ControlUp, and again, imagine this is a View environment, it would act exactly the same. We would simply find the relevant user, right? We'll switch to the sessions view, we'll find this is a user called CUtest, and he's running on that RDS server, and we'll simply execute the kill policy action. Right, and once we do that, we are actually removing the group policy UI restrictions. So now, as you can see, the session is not restricted. We as an admin, we can actually go ahead and change proxy settings. We can right-click. We can open any tool we want. And once we finish kind of troubleshooting the issue, we can simply reapply the group policy. And the user session will go back to restricted mode. Right, so this is just an example of how existing features like remote assistance, like kill policy, like managing the servers are obviously relevant for any VDI or RDS environment managed under VMware VMware Horizon 6. Right, so let's move on. We have another feature in ControlUp 4, which we think is pretty cool, and it was actually a feature that was requested by some of our larger customers, and I'm really glad we were able to introduce it in this release. So we're actually calling it ControlUp URLs, and the main use case of it is to enable a quick and easy integration of existing ticketing systems with ControlUp, right? And you know, I would say I can describe I can try and describe a use case, but you know, a picture worth a thousand words. So let's just go ahead. I'm going to open. We just built, you know, just before the demo, just before the webinar, we built a very basic HTML page. So yeah, forgive me for the lack of any interesting graphics here, but it's again, it was like 5 minutes work. Now, what we're trying to show here, this is supposed to be a basic ticketing system screen that shows a ticket that was opened by a user called CU test, again, same CU test. And we can see some details like, you know, on which computer the user is working on, and I'll discuss the last line in a minute, right? So imagine this is a well-known ticketing system. This could be sysaid or you know, BMC or you know, anything you guys are familiar with in enterprise environments. Now, the request was, and I think it really makes sense, the request was this, right? So we were seeing a ticket, we are seeing the end user in the ticketing system. Probably the next thing we want to do is, you know, go to ControlUp, find that user, and see what he's doing right now. So we can see, you know, first we can see if he's having any issues. We can, you know, use ControlUp to remote assist the user. We can use ControlUp to terminate any problematic processes. We can see what's going on. So it really makes sense to kind of connect the ticketing system with the actual IT operations platform you guys are using to manage it, right? To manage the end users, to manage the computer there. So let me show you, right? So you can see this is actually a link. And I'll show you the link in a bit. But what happens if I click on it? It will basically launch ControlUp, assuming it's not opened yet. It will switch to the sessions view, and it will focus or search that specific user, right? All by clicking a single button. So this is the ControlUp URL feature. And you can see it enables me to actually, in something like 5 seconds, find the user in the ControlUp real-time views. And now I can start, you know, interacting with it. I can go ahead and, you know, chat with the user. I can again get a screenshot. I can drill down to see what kind of apps he's running right now. I can terminate problematic apps. So from a help desk user support perspective, this is, I think, really valuable and should make troubleshooting and end user support much easier. One thing I have to note here before we move on is that we fully support permission delegations, right? We have a built-in security policy, which enables you guys to basically create custom roles, like a support role, and make sure this support role can only launch some very specific actions you enabled him to, like remote assistance, terminate process, and chat, right? That's it. So once you do that, the help desk user, when you right-click the user, you will only see his allowed actions. Okay, so this is one example of the ControlUp URLs feature. You can go ahead and, you know, integrate it with the ticketing system, and the way you do that is super simple. If you look on the link here, I share the link. Right, so this is the way it's working, right? This is kind of an HTTP-like language or URL. You simply start with the ControlUp. My organization is the main pane, you know, the main ControlUp pane we're using to show all the grids. And then you simply continue with the relevant path, right? If it's a user, you have to go to the sessions view and type in the username. And if you want to see a computer, for example, like I'm doing right now, so I just clicked on this, and ControlUp will actually focus on that specific computer. Right, so this is really valuable if you want to kind of focus on a computer with a single click. And the link, again, it's pretty simple. You can just see it in here. Right, so it's the same beginning, right? ControlUp, my organization, but we are looking on the computer's pane, on the computer's view, and then we are filling in the actual computer name. And lastly, we have the incidents, right? So if you guys are familiar with ControlUp 3, then you know we have a feature called incident triggers. And this is actually a feature that enables us to capture events like service crashes, user logon events, stress-related events. So a whole bunch of events which are important for any sysadmins to monitor. And we save them in a historical database for later analysis. But if we kind of correlate that with the ticketing system integration, we can actually add a very simple link in the ticketing system screen that will enable us to quickly jump into ControlUp incidents pane, but filter the incidents database to show us only incidents related, in this case, to that specific user. Right? So once the filter has finished its work, we can see incidents that are only related to this user. So for example, we can see his logon history. Right? We can see here that this user is logged on right today at 7 p.m. This is obviously another time zone. We can see the logon history. We can go back. We can see the session state changes. And in this specific case, the user hasn't experienced any session stress or process stress related incidents. But if that was the case, you would have seen it in here. Right? So this is a great way to quickly integrate the existing ticketing systems with ControlUp real-time views and incidents historical database. Right. So this is another, I think, one of the nice new features in V4, the integration with ticketing systems. Right. So I know we have a few minutes left, and I really want to take the time to try and answer some of the questions. So let's see here what we have, and we'll try to kind of answer them during the webinar. So I'm seeing one question here, and it goes like, can ControlUp monitor the IMA service in the farm on each single Xenapp server? This is actually a great question because on Xenapp 6.5 farms, the IMA service is critical, right? If the IMA service is down, no one can connect to the server, and it's not a healthy state. So I actually just mentioned the incident trigger mechanism, and this is where you'll go and configure the incident trigger that will detect whenever the IMA service is down. It's very simple, right? We'll choose the process and the trigger. We'll use the filter to describe the service executable name. In this case, IMA srv.exe. And we can actually add a new filter, a new condition that say, I'm only interested in cases where the exit code, right, is not equal to 0. Right, so this is a very simple condition. What it will do, basically, it will detect every time the IMA service is going down, is ending. But if the exit code is not 0, meaning that the service has crashed and wasn't manually stopped, it will create an incident for that. So you can later do some analysis and see, how many times the service is crashing on which servers. But beyond that, you can also configure a real-time alert. Right? You can go here and you can say, right, whenever this specific incident is identified, I want to get a real-time email alert. I want to record this to the event log to connect this with my my main monitoring solution. Right, so it's obviously pretty easy to detect these kinds of events, and you can also get a real-time alert via email, mobile push notification to ControlUp iOS or Android apps, or all any of the other follow-up actions you're seeing on screen. All right, so another question. can you find out which homepage causing I/O to consume a lot of resources? All right, actually a classic question. So obviously, iExplore is one of the most, resource consuming applications we are familiar with. And let's see, we can see, I think we might find some example in here. Right, so we have quite a few, browser instances running right now. And the question was, how can we see, for example, how this, or this, or how basically an iExplore application, which is causing a lot of issues, is how can we find out which URL is hiding behind this? So in this case, the question would be script-based actions. We actually developed an action called iURLs, right? This actually enables us to find out which URL or which homepage is actually associated with that specific ID, right? And let's see if we can show you a quick example. Let me try and execute it right now. You know what? Let's do it on the session level. It might make more sense. So we have here a user. We can just right-click the user, and we can execute an action called iURLs. Right, and what it does basically, it runs a PowerShell-based code, and it returns to us the PID, the process PID, and the title, the URL and the title of the browser stream. So we can see here this specific PID is associated with this website, Spanish website, right? So you can use this on any iExplore process or on any session running iExplore instances, and you will immediately see which homepage or which URL is associated with the iExplore PID causing an issue. Okay, so another thing I'm not sure I've shown you, but this is actually one of my favorite new features in V4, and this is the freeze column feature. So just to show you what it looks like, so right now this is not enabled, right? So I'm seeing a bunch of servers. As you might notice, we have quite a few metrics going on, and it's sometimes, if you start scrolling right, you will see all the metrics, but you lose sight of the actual computer associated with those metrics. So this is where freeze columns kicks in, right? You can click on freeze columns in here. Just click on freeze column, and it will freeze the selected column, in this case, the computer name. And now I can start scrolling right, and just like in Excel, the leftmost column will stay frozen. So we can, focus on, I don't know, disk-related metrics or Xenapp-related metrics, but we can still see the computer name next to them. So it makes it much easier to understand specific issues and still find, in the same screen, see the computer name or any other relevant column you want to freeze. Okay, now one other thing, and this is a question from the audience, is what is the view-related incidents action? So by now, some of you might have guessed it, but as I mentioned, we have the incidents view, the incidents pane, which will show us an historical view of all incidents that happen in our environment. Now, if you right-click on an object, on a computer or a session or a process, and click on the view-related incidents, what will happen is ControlUp will actually switch to the incidents pane, the user interface that shows us all the historical incidents, but it will filter the view by default to show you only that specific resource you selected, right? If you right-click on a server, then we'll see only those incidents related to this server. And if you right-click on a session or a process, you will kind of filter the view to show you only incidents related to this object. In this case, we chose one of the Xenapp servers, so we can see stress-related incidents that happen on this specific server. We actually had 9 related computer stress incidents happening on this Xenapp server. And we can drill down and see the exact incidents, see which metrics caused the server to cross the stress level, and basically see all relevant details which are needed for post-mortem investigations. Right, so one more question from the audience. Do you have anything similar to Xenapp shadowing, to remote assist, remote support end users? So luckily enough, the answer is yes. Right? We can actually right-click any session, and we actually support the built-in shadow, the shadow command. We can do it for RDS and ICA sessions. But I would say shadow is a bit flaky starting in Xenapp 6.5, and it's actually not supported on Zen desktop sessions. So we usually recommend our customers to use the built-in remote assistance feature. It's working out of the box on any RDS or VDI session. We have completely automated the invitation process and enabling the feature on the target. So you can definitely use the remote assistance feature to seamlessly remote assist users on VDI, on Xenapp workloads, and it's working out of the box. It's great. It supports multiple monitors. So yeah, just use that. But if you really want to, you can use the shadow built-in action. Right, so let's see if we have any other interesting questions. Oh, by the way, we'll obviously send the webinar recording to everyone who registered, and any questions, feel free to ask us. We have, you can check our website, you can check the support form, you can send an email to support@controlup.com. We will gladly answer anything related to the product from a business perspective, or obviously product-related questions. Let's see if we have anything else interesting. Right. Okay. So, Eric, I think for me at least, this was a great demonstration of the new features in ControlUp 4.0. I think we covered most of the big new features like hypervisor integration, the I/O metrics, and the ability to do I/O deep dive and troubleshooting, the VMware Horizon and View support in this release, and obviously the ControlUp URLs, which enables you to integrate any ticketing system with ControlUp. So I'm kind of, Eric, back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining. It was very interesting. There's a lot of new features popping up, and also good to see you showing off some of the old features that still are very popular. For example, troubleshooting through the group policy. As always, we're gonna send out a replay of this webinar. So if you miss a spot, or if you want to show it off to colleagues, I would send out a replay tomorrow. So thank you everyone for joining, and until next time, bye bye.